Hey y'all, Anna Kalingo here, your host for The Womb Warmer, a podcast for mothers and mothers in waiting to share their stories. I am super excited for today's episode because one, it is the first episode recorded in my very janky basement studio, and two, it is recorded with one of my best friends and oldest friends, Amanda. We met when I was a freshman in high school, and we have sustained that friendship for over 20 years, which is a long time. And when I think about the reason that it has been sustained, it is one, we have had very little, if any, pretty sure zero drama throughout our friendship. And two, we are able to pick up like we never left off whenever we see each other, which I value so much. We have shared a lot of laughs, a lot of movie quotes together. She is just as good at quoting movies as I am. Have quoted a lot of old school and Wedding Crashers. We have shared a lot of beer pong and cornhole victories in our day. And I'm so excited to be able to share her experience because in that you see this resilience and grit and perspective that I think you will find very valuable. So we'll dive right in. All right. I am here today with Amanda Niblick. I almost forgot. I almost called you Saborik.
Okay. You could have.
This is a very momentous episode because it is the first episode in our studio, which for those of you, obviously this is just recorded. It's not on video, but if it was on video, you would see what looks like the Saw room.
Yes, it's definitely the setup of the Saw movie, the very first one.
So she is not down here to be tortured. And at some point, when I get to the level of Joe Rogan, this studio will look much better and it'll be like a wine cellar. But for now, it's just a bunch of torn up walls that looks really sketch. So thank you.
I love it.
For joining me. Amanda also is one of my oldest friends, and we met in high school. Had a lot of great memories. Still have created them over the years. And thank you so much for joining.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Let's get started with the first question I ask everyone, which is growing up, what was your expectation of getting married and having kids?
Okay, so I read your questions beforehand because Anna prepped me very well. And I was like, what am I going to say to this question? Because I'm going to sound terrible with my answer. So my parents, they didn't have a great marriage. They got divorced when I was in third grade. So my view of like marriage and family was very much skewed. When I got married, obviously I was very excited to marry Zach and excited to have a marriage with him. But I honestly never wanted to have kids.
Okay.
So I never wanted to have kids. And then all of a sudden, I think it was a year into our marriage, something like a flip switched. And I think when talking to other women, they feel like the same urge to get pregnant and like start a family. And that very much happened for me. So it was complete.
Interesting.
Yeah, complete 180.
Do you think some of that had to do with wanting to have a family with Zach in particular?
Yes, for sure. 100%.
Yeah. I think picturing it with the man who you love and seeing him and wanting him to be a father.
Yeah.
Is huge. Okay, so a year in, you say you start considering this. How was that conversation with Zach? Did he want kids?
Yeah, he wanted to have kids. He was in no rush to have kids. He wanted a family.
Okay, so you guys start pursuing. What did that look like? Talk to me about how you started, and then when did you start suspecting there could be issues, and how did you navigate that?
So we made the decision to stop using any protection, like no condoms, no birth control, just to see what happens. Like very relaxed, casual. not in any rush. And then about 6 months in, we were like, why am I not pregnant? You know, like we weren't trying to put pressure on ourselves, but we were also like, this is
What's
weird.
going on?
And I think growing up, everybody knows, like they they tell you, like, don't ever not use a condom. You're gonna get pregnant.
We saw a lot of girls in high school get pregnant.
Yes, we did. So yeah, after 6 months, I was like, there's something not right. And he's like, it's fine. Like, it'll be fine. And I think a year in, I went and saw my OB, and she said, okay, how long have you been trying? What do you want to do? Like, what's your timeline like? So we gave it I think we ended up giving it another 6 months or so.
Okay.
And she said, okay, if you're not pregnant in 6 months, come back and we'll talk about options. So
go in and you talk about options. Mm-hmm. What were those and what did you all try?
We tried Clomid, which is out of the gate. They always try the Clomid.
Drop those eggs.
Yep. Clomid obviously didn't work. I don't know who it works for, but great for you. And well, I can't remember.
Random question, but were you getting your period regularly through this time?
I was, which is even more frustrating.
Yes.
Like, I'm regular. Mm-hmm. What is happening?
And that confused me with Clomid too, because I didn't totally understand. Like, why because it felt like my eggs were dropping. Exactly.
Aren't I a chicken already? I'm already dropping the eggs. What the heck? Oh my gosh. But yeah, I tried the Clomid, didn't work, and then came back, and I think she ended up, I don't know if she referred me to a specialist or if I ended up just going to a specialist that a family member used. I think my family member just referred me and I called them. Mm-hmm. I had the conversation with him. He's like, what have you all tried? How long have you been trying? I think even he suggested, like, how about you do a cycle with us just monitoring everything, like not using any intervention, which was nice because he didn't want to like jump the gun.
Yeah.
But I had to come in like the routine appointments of him like monitoring everything. So
that's a lot.
Yeah. It was like testing your levels before your period and then after, and just monitoring the whole thing.
How were your levels when he tested them?
So I did find out through my OB that I had PCOS. So before I went to the fertility specialist, I did know that.
Okay.
And that just means my hormone levels were off. So my testosterone was higher than my estrogen. Yes. And so that will kind of mess things up with your cycle and mess things up with getting pregnant. So I didn't know that going in, but again, like my periods were regular. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I just have some symptoms because PCOS is there's not a lot of research behind it, and there's not a lot of treatment for it. Mm-hmm. So he knew that going in, and then things were a little off, like through my cycle. But he's like, okay, well, how about now we try having a medicated cycle. So started with just monitoring things baseline, then started a medicated cycle. Okay. So it would be doing like the same appointments, but I'll have medicine to kind of like tailor everything.
Okay.
It consisted of taking pills and then also taking shots. So I think there was pills to like make sure your cycle's going to start, and then there was injections to make sure your eggs were going to grow, and then there was a trigger shot that you would do to release the egg, and then you had to time sex the right way, and that didn't work either.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you find timing sex?
Horrible. It was horrible. It was so horrible. It took everything out of the experience, obviously.
Yeah.
he was more frustrated with it than I was, because he's the one, like,
it's a lot of pressure.
He's the one doing it, you know? I just show up. And he just does his thing. That was hard. Anybody that goes through this process knows that was like, takes it all out of the
experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't work. Now, had he been tested at all through this?
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
I was trying to think back, because this is hard. Like, I suppressed so much of this experience. And doing your questions and like thinking about how I was going to answer things, I was like, no, he never did. Like, it took
that's kind of wild.
A long time for them to be like, oh, maybe we should test him.
Yeah.
It's like, you're testing me for everything. Why aren't you testing him? He got tested after the medicated cycle. And then we moved on because his levels were low. So he ended up having low T and not producing a lot of swimmers, quote unquote.
Okay.
So he ended up taking testosterone. He went to his PCP and got put on testosterone, which helped him in a lot of different areas too, because with low T, like, it'll affect your energy levels and all sorts of things. So like, it really benefited him in more ways than just me getting pregnant. Got tested, did the semen analysis, and then we moved on to a medicated IUI.
Okay.
We did one round. I believe it was one round of IUI. That didn't work.
Okay.
And I was extremely upset because it had been, I think how many years into it were we? I want to say it was 3 or 4. No, 3 years. I think we were 3 years into it by then.
Exhausted.
I was exhausted, discouraged. Our marriage was being affected. Like, all of our time and energy was just being put into this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this isn't a life. Like, we aren't experiencing a life right now.
Yeah.
And this is how it's going to be. If it's just going to be us two, like, we can't let our marriage fall apart.
Right.
Like, we need each other. So we actually put a pause on things for about 6 months. Time to kind of like process everything, step back, and I don't know what it was. I think I just decided, okay, we're going to try again.
Okay.
Throughout all of this, he's just like, I'm just here,
along for the ride.
And I ended up getting the uterine flush. There's a long name for it, but it's like a uterine flush out.
Okay.
So they like shoot dye through your tubes.
To make sure that your tubes are open?
Yes, make sure your tubes are open.
Had that, and I thought, side note, I thought it was funny because when she went up there, I don't know how long it took for you, but it took like maybe 30 minutes for me. She was up there and she was like fiddling around a lot.
Oh gosh.
And at one point she was like, yeah, I just have some troubleshooting to do down here. And I'm like, okay, I haven't heard that word used in relation to my vagina, but cool, you troubleshoot away. Good luck.
Do you need to bring IT in here?
Yeah, exactly.
What? That is so bizarre.
It was funny. Anyways, so the dye.
So was it painful for
you?
It
was very painful.
It was so painful for me. And I remember him like prepping me. He's like, he didn't have any troubleshooting to do. It was like very quick. He's like, all right, we're going to do this. It's going to hurt. But here we go. And he did it. And it like immediately caused like the worst contraction ever. Mm-hmm. Like the worst cramp. And it was over. It was done and over and very quickly. Mm-hmm. And it did spill out, but he said it like kind of, I don't know.
Bubbled
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he described it, but he said it didn't. It took a little bit of time for it to spill out. So he said overall he didn't have any concerns with blockage. I was like, all right. And he's like, and if like that little time it took for it to spill out, maybe that cleared the blockage.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, whatever. Whatever you say. So that was done and over with. And I can't remember. He's like, he wanted to do something else. And I think it was, I kept bringing up how I was having like pain throughout my cycle, and it was just kind of like annoying pain, but sometimes it was worse, and it wasn't when I had my period. So it could have been one of two things. It could be the PCOS, the cysts rupturing, but it could be endometriosis. And I'm like, okay, so what do we do? Like, what are my options for that? He's like, I could do a laparoscopy. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. Because I didn't want to be discouraged again. Like, let's try all of these things. Let's like test me out. So I ended up getting a laparoscopy. And thank goodness I did, because he went in and he found out I had scar tissue.
Okay.
So he's like, anything that, like, if you were to conceive, it wouldn't have been able to
survive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was like a huge relief to hear that a problem was
there was something
solved.
there,
so,
right?
You know, I was like, thank goodness. Like, I'm glad I kept bringing it up, because everybody was dismissing me, but I'm like, this doesn't seem normal, the pain that I'm having. So I ended up, I remember being in recovery, and I'm sure like I was all like looped up and stuff because I was under anesthesia, but I remember vividly like just breaking down and crying and being like, thank God, like this might be the reason why we aren't conceiving, and like I'm finally resolving something. So yeah.
Yeah, because it's like you're walking along and you feel like a Will Ferrell and Zoolander. You're like, am I taking crazy pills here?
I taking crazy? Exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have endometriosis solved. What's the recovery like for that surgery?
No, I mean, I will say the recovery, there was a few days after that it was super painful. Just because, I mean, they literally take like a laser and they remove scar tissue. Yeah. But it was just a few days.
Okay.
I was fine. So that was resolved, and then I moved on. We were able to do another IUI.
Okay.
Did an IUI, and when they do the IUI, they do like the semen analysis too. Like they wash the sperm, which is interesting. They only like take out the best ones. He, like, even on testosterone, there weren't that many. And I didn't have that many eggs either.
Okay.
So we weren't working with a lot. But did the second one, tried again, didn't work. So 1 and 2 didn't work, but 3 did.
All right, third time.
Third time's a charm. And if it wouldn't have been that third time, we probably would have moved on to IVF.
How did you feel after the second time? Were you
discouraged? Yeah, I mean, it's like we took time off in between the second and the third one also, because I'm like, I can't keep doing this. Like, something's got to give. Like, are we deciding that we don't want a family? Yeah. Like, are we just gonna put this like in the back of our minds, and this not gonna be a thing for us? But after some time, we came back to it.
Out of curiosity, how was healthcare coverage during this?
Great, actually.
Awesome.
Pretty good coverage. He worked for a school district. I believe, was he with the school district the first time? Yeah, he was with the school district the first time. And it covered everything except for like the medication was partially covered. Okay. So, I mean, it was still pricey, but not
nearly what it could be, right?
Yeah, IUI, like, there's a lot of people that don't have that coverage.
Okay, so throughout this whole process, I mean, so end to end, that's what, 4 or 5 years?
It's about 5 years total.
Yeah. Reaction when you found out you were pregnant?
I didn't believe it. I really didn't. And like you're checking all the symptoms, like you're saying, okay, these are the symptoms of when you're gonna, like, you're about to get your period if you have these symptoms, and then you're gonna have these symptoms if you're gonna get pregnant. But a lot of them are the same, so you really can't tell. So it's a lot of it's just a mental game that you're playing with yourself. I'm just gonna pretend. I'm just gonna trick myself and tell myself that I'm getting my period. And then maybe I'll get pregnant. Like some weird twisted mind game that you're playing, like you have any control over it. So I remember that one of the symptoms were your heart rate will be elevated when you're pregnant.
Okay.
Like if it's at all like out of normal, like the normal range. And I remember working out and thinking, this is really high for what I'm doing. I'm
like I feel really out of shape.
I'm like, I've been working out throughout this whole process, and like when I run, it's this, and this is a lot higher. So I don't know why, but I thought like, I think I should test, because I even got to the point where I'm not even going to test.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time taking a pregnancy test because I'm just going to get my period the next day.
Yeah.
Because that's how it would work. So I ended up testing. I think I even did it right after I was done working out. And I'm like, I'm just going to do it. And it ended up being positive. But it was like the faintest line. Because it was really early.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this a line? I was talking to Zach, obviously. And he's like, I think it's a line. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, ran up to the dollar store. I'm not paying for full price. I don't know what the thinking was behind that. I'm not going to pay full price. So anyway, I got the dollar store, and it did. It showed another faint line. I'm like, okay, I'm going to test again in a couple days and see if it's like a solid line. And yeah, I honestly didn't believe it. I'm like, even if, like, maybe it's just like fake. Maybe it's not. It's weird. It's a weird feeling.
It is a weird feeling. I think too I know for Vance, it didn't feel real until we went to the doctor too. And we think probably for the husband, because even I didn't really feel that much.
No.
But
I feel like it was real until she was even here.
It's like throughout the whole thing.
Like, we're in labor, and he's like, this isn't real. No, it's very, I don't actually mean that, but I think it's very different.
Yeah. Throughout those 5 years, like, how did you deal with the emotional roller coaster that goes with it? And like, were there any tactics that you used to help manage your own emotions, or things that you stepped away from?
Yeah. So, one of the things that didn't help was I'm going to do the opposite question. One thing that didn't help was I took a manager position during the process. It was very early on, and I remember being very stressed out. I had a really supportive team, like department that I was managing. So I remember like talking with them a lot. Distributing work and like taking some workload off. So they were super helpful, but having that position was not helpful.
Yeah.
I also, during that time, reached out, like I was researching different like things that could help me with like stress relief. And it's kind of ironic. Like, I'm a social worker. I worked for a counseling agency. Never once even thought like, I'm going to go to counseling. I don't understand what I was thinking with that. I think social workers or counselors out there, like, maybe you think all the coping strategies, like you think that you could just do therapy on yourself, I guess. But I never did that. But I did do acupuncture.
Okay.
And honestly, the acupuncture, whether it was in my mind, I don't care what it was, but it helped.
Okay.
It helped relieve stress, and it provided time, just myself.
Yeah.
And for me to like focus on nothing, or focus on the pins in my body, maybe. I really found it helpful, and I enjoyed it. Cool. I don't know. And there are a lot of people that go out there and use acupuncture for fertility issues.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Do you still do acupuncture at all? Or okay.
Nope, don't do it anymore. But I did it throughout for a good, I want to say 2 years or so.
Okay.
During like after we went to the fertility specialist.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What about did you do like changes in your diet, or were we talking about plastics earlier? Did we? Yeah.
So I remember bringing this up to the fertility doctor one of the first times I visited him. And I'm like, should I change my diet? Like, what should I eat? Should I eat more pineapple? Like, what do I need? And he laughed at me because he was old school. He's like, we've been getting pregnant since the Stone Ages. Like, you don't need to change anything. And I'm like, okay, you're just saying that because our food is very different compared to the Stone Ages. But he was also trying to relieve my anxiety. He's like, don't overthink it. Just, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Because I even remember I was going to a bachelorette party, not yours. It was a different one. And I had already had
a child.
And I was like, can I even have a drink during this process? He's like, yes, you can have a drink during this process. Like, you're okay. Just don't like get, wild. So he was very much trying to, take the pressure off of me. But acupuncture, working out, I ended up like adding a lot more greens to my diet. I stopped drinking out of plastic bottles, which I wasn't even really drinking out of plastic bottles very much.
Became more aware of what you were.
Very much focused on like what I was taking in. I took, the prenatals. I researched what supplements would help you.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I was taking. It's CoQ.
Yes, CoQ10.
CoQ10.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking CoQ10 and all the vitamins that would, that if you were to Google what helps get you pregnant, I tried it.
You were on it.
I honestly tried it. And then what Anna was referencing before, she was telling me about her new water.
Oh yeah, my new water filter.
Yeah,
we got a new water filter, Avalon. That's my promo for Avalon.
And I was telling her how I was on Zach's case about drinking bottled water, because if you Google that, it is not good for fertility in men and in women, but this could be affecting your sperm count. I think he ended up backing off of water bottles for a while. Who knows if that
had any
impact at all, but we're going to pretend that I was right.
I told Vance that I was going to use less perfume because, like, fertility, but also in general, we put a lot of chemicals in our body.
Yeah,
right. And he was like, "No, Anna, I like the perfume, and your sister wears the perfume all the time, and she's got a lot of babies,
so you're fine.
You can wear the perfume." Like, okay, I'll wear it sometimes when I'm at home by myself. It is interesting, though, because as a problem solver, you want to solve the problem.
You do. You want to eliminate anything that could be impacting it.
Mm-hmm.
You overthink every step of your daily routine.
Yeah. Okay, so your beautiful daughter comes. What was her name? What is her name?
Her name is Marlo.
Okay, Marlo. So Marlo comes, and first, how was the pregnancy? How were you throughout the pregnancy? Were you anxious? Were you excited? Were you happy?
Am I your first pandemic baby story?
I think you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
20, it was wild times.
Yeah.
Okay. So got pregnant, found out February of 2020, right? Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. Because she was born in October of 2020.
Yeah.
So found out in February of 2020 that I was pregnant. And then pregnancy actually was great. I had no issues. I think I only got sick once. Like, I didn't even really I had some nausea, but I never got like sick except for one time. And work out throughout my pregnancy. But it was the pandemic. Like, everything was shut down. So I didn't really get out.
Yeah.
Like, I was working from home 100%. Wasn't able to see family that much because I'm like, it took me this long to get pregnant. I didn't know if I should like expose myself. Like, there were so many questions in the world. And
you just don't want to take that risk.
Yeah.
When you've worked so hard for this.
Yes, exactly. So we kept our like visits minimum. Like, we still traveled, we still visited family, we still saw like our neighbors, but like for the most part, I didn't go like to restaurants. I didn't go out if I didn't need to. It was really nice because being pregnant isn't easy.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end, you're exhausted, and I was just able to just kind of like
you had an excuse.
I had the perfect setup. I did lose my mom in July of 2020. So I did lose her when I was pregnant. and had found out that she was terminal before she passed. So that was a huge impact on my pregnancy, because I was like trying not to grieve, because I'm like, is this going to impact her,
the baby's health?
Because you don't know. And so there was that. And I kind of like put that on. I like suppressed. I'm just gonna
put that on the back burner.
I'll grieve later. No, I didn't. Obviously, that was hard. But there was that in July, and I don't think there were any complications with the pregnancy.
Awesome. So the baby arrives, and she did have some post-birth complications.
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier how you were really persistent with the doctors with your own issues and going back to them and being like, I think this is an issue. Can you walk us through how you did that with Marlo too?
Yeah.
I think it's really impressive.
Yeah. So I gave birth to Marla in October of 2020. She passed the newborn hearing screening. And to this day, I have like a vivid memory of them testing her in the room. And I don't know why that has stuck in my head. But, you know, everybody was really burnt out during the pandemic. There was like, everybody was just overwhelmed and probably being overworked because staffing issues, yada, yada, yada. Just like spiraling with all the what ifs or whys of the situation. But I did find out, I had suspicion, like I suspected that she was deaf. Both my husband and I, and him more so than me. I think I was kind of, what's the word? Naive or optimistic. Yeah. I was optimistic that it wasn't, that she was deaf. We suspected like she wasn't turning to loud noises. She wasn't responding to her name. That was honestly the biggest thing, is she wasn't responding to her name. And I think they say after 6 months, a year, I can't remember the milestones for this. I should know it. But she wasn't responding to her name, and we brought this up to the pediatrician. Pediatrician's like, you know, maybe she's just ignoring you, like very extremely dismissive. And like, we had a very hard, I know it's hard becoming a parent. I recognize that there are a lot of hard things, like adjusting to having a newborn, like the newborn period is just hard. But Marlo was, what they say is colicky.
Oh yeah.
And she didn't sleep. Like there was so much stress on the newborn stage. Yeah. I honestly think we eventually find out she was deaf. And I think that she couldn't be soothed by like my voice, and there are a lot of things.
Any sounds, any music,
anything. The sound machine, monitor. The music, nothing soothed her. Body contact, like she was constant body contact, which helped, but it was still it wasn't soothing her all the way. So all of these, I say this because all of these things we brought up from the first appointment with him. And it's like, she's probably colicky, and then later on she's not responding to her name because, you know, she's just ignoring you. So we were really frustrated with him, and we finally, we brought it back up, and we're like, we want a referral. Like, if you're going to dismiss us, we want a referral to a specialist, because, so he did a test in the room that day, and it must have been inconclusive. He said it was inconclusive, but I think it was just like a false, a negative, and then referred us on to a specialist. And she had, because of her age, she had to get a sedated MRI scan.
Oh, wow.
Brain scan. That's the only way to test at that age, other than the newborn screening. So she had that, and they told us, I remember being in that room with the doctor, whoever they were, and she's like, I have a lot of concerns. She cannot hear at all. She's profoundly deaf. If she was next to a plane taking off, she would not be able to hear that plane. So I was obviously an emotional mess.
Yeah.
and really frustrated with the system and frustrated. Like, I was frustrated with myself because I was like, we brought it up over and over again. Like, why didn't I try harder? Like, I know I tried hard.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. You just think.
You think about what you could have done better.
All of the things you could go back and do. Like have them do the newborn screening again, or, you know, so.
Which of course isn't fair to yourself.
It isn't. I'm like trying to give myself grace through the process because new parent, you know, never had any other kids, don't know what to compare this to.
And you're listening to doctors.
Yes,
who
the doctors.
You trust.
Yes, you would think that they would know. So they find out. We find out she's deaf, and we also find out that she has fluid on her brain. So this was just like a random thing. They find out, like, the imaging shows that there's fluid on her brain. So we're looking at her. We go to Nationwide Children's. We're looking at her My Chart, reviewing the notes, because they don't even really give us that much information other than she's deaf. We're referring you on to an ENT, and they'll give you like recommendations. And also, like, in the chart, we see notes saying that you're going to be referred to a brain surgeon. We're like,
that's a big footnote.
Why are we being referred to a brain surgeon? We're being referred to an ENT because she's deaf. But we were so frustrated with the system because nobody told us about the fluid until we were looking at.
Wow.
Yeah. So we find out that we have to make this appointment with the brain surgeon and then also the ENT. And we meet with the ENT, and they're like, you know, here are your options. You could, honestly, the ENT is just like telling us cochlears are the answer. Which obviously we're very grateful that cochlears are an option, and we did go that route.
Yeah.
But they never gave us like an option to just let her live her life without a cochlear. You know, they were just like, this is the solution. We're problem solvers, which they're doctors. That's their job. And I don't regret my decision, but going back and thinking back, they never presented any other options.
Yeah.
They passed through, like, they didn't even say hearing aids because of the severity. Because there's no sound to amplify with hearing aids. So we're on our path to getting cochlears, and then we're also following up with the brain surgeon.
Lord.
And it's like, the timeline is crazy on all of this. It's so fast. And so we go see the neurosurgeon.
And is this all before she's 1 year old?
Yes.
Okay.
No, slightly after.
Okay.
Slightly after 1, sorry. And they say, you know, there's fluid on her brain. It looks like it's from a ruptured cyst. And our thinking is, well, can this be affecting her hearing? You know, like, we want to make sure we're not going to move on to cochlears if
this would solve the
problem. And he's like, no, it's not. Like, the fluid's not in an area that would affect the hearing. Like, my expertise I would say no. But they couldn't, like, 100% say no. And of course, Zach and I are like Googling, you know, and there's like this one case study that shows that they removed fluid from the brain, and all of a sudden the person was able to hear again. So we like had hope for a little bit with that. Okay.
And now, did they have surgery to remove the fluid from the brain?
No. Okay. So he said that they like to monitor. Like, it wasn't a ridiculous amount of fluid that was going to impact anything. It was stable looking, and they thought it was an arachnoid cyst that they specified that ruptured, and they thought that it would dissipate after time. And if it didn't, like, they had us go back afterwards. I think it was like 6 months later to see if it got worse, and it went down. So we didn't have to. They actually would have recommended a shunt. That was, for a while, they were going to have her get a shunt, which thankfully we didn't have to go that route.
What is a shunt?
A shunt is something that they would have placed in her head. And, like, I think it would be connected in the back of her head, and it would drain the fluid.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A lot to navigate.
So much to navigate.
Yeah, all at once.
How did you and Zach manage making those decisions together? Like, those are really big decisions for her.
Huge. Those were huge decisions. I think we were always on board with the same things. Like, our mindset was like, as far as the shunt and like the fluid went, we were on board with what they were recommending. Like, we weren't going to get a shunt, and we were going to wait to see if it dissipated. We don't want to like put a shunt in because then you would have to remove it. Was like a whole thing. So we were encouraged by the doctor to wait before we made that decision. And we made the right decision because it's dissipating. And she never got her hearing back while it was dissipating. It's still there. Like, we're still monitoring it. But we moved on with the cochlear surgery.
Okay.
And our thought was, we were using sign language at the time, like, the baby sign, the basics. And we thought we would continue to learn sign language, but also move on with the cochlear surgery. Because, we live in a hearing world, and we want her to have all the options. So...
And it's really amazing that that's available.
Yes.
And that technology is available.
Yeah.
And so how is her hearing now? And she is 3 or 4? She's 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5. We regularly see an audiologist for her cochlear. So we just went last week and she gets like routinely tested to see how her hearing's doing, how the program is, because they have to program her cochlears.
Okay.
And they're honestly, like, the technology is similar to like phone upgrades.
Oh, interesting.
So go back and like, if there's like an upgrade that we could have or get, we do that. So she's doing really well. She sees a speech therapist also.
Okay.
So she is considered delayed for her age, but she's on like the lower spectrum for her age. So
awesome.
Like, compared to her hearing peers. So it's pretty amazing. There's a lot of things that are different, like, compared to, like, she doesn't hear the same way as us.
Yeah.
And we'll never really know what her experience is until she's able to communicate those things. But she's doing really well. Yeah.
That's awesome. What are some of the surprises that motherhood has brought with it? Like, happy surprises.
Happy surprises. Happy surprises would be just like those little everyday things where you're like, oh my gosh, she learned to do this. Like I was telling you, even though I was frustrated with it, but she learned to lock a door yesterday. So locked herself in the bathroom yesterday, and I was like really frustrated about it. And I'm like, why am I frustrated? She's learning to use a lock. Reframing everything, but it's just like those little things, and like just playing, the little silly things you do with them, and you're just like, wow, like living in the moment with them.
Are you and Zach considering having more kiddos?
We are not.
Okay.
So we decided, it was about a year in, that we did not want to have another child. And he ended up getting a vasectomy.
Okay. So that has been taken care of.
Yes. We are not having another child.
I like it.
Yes.
But so when you look back on the experience, there's a lot of pain there. If you could pick out something that you're grateful for, what would that be?
Through the whole experience and the pain, I am grateful, obviously, for Marlo. She is so much like me and so stubborn. She's like a little mini version of me and Zach. So she has my dorky. I'm very much grateful for her.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm grateful for like Zach and I to still be together. Honestly, because that is not easy. It's not easy to go through all of that.
It's super trying. Especially too, I think, seeing other people go through it successfly and easily.
Marriage in itself is hard.
Yeah, so exactly. You throw in all of that.
Like, we're still doing it. We're still together.
Well, it's been a long time, right? Like
Yeah.
10.
Like 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
10 years in September.
That's
that we've
awesome.
Been married, yeah. Well, that we've been married.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay, so to close, what words of wisdom or maybe encouragement or something like that would you share for people listening?
So for people listening, I would say to, if you're doing this with a partner, make sure that you guys communicate through the process and support each other and support their views on things, because they may be different sometimes and you guys might need different things at different times, and it's okay. And to try, like I tried acupuncture, like I never in a million years. I'm terrified of needles. I'm terrified of needles. Like try things that you might think are crazy to help yourself, and surround yourself with people that will support you. It's like having good friends. Like I had a really good group of friends, a really good group of coworkers, that will support you and just let you vent through the process. And also advocate for yourself, because at the end of the day, like they might be doctors, but you know your body and you know if something's not right.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, you're welcome.